to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today we are joined by Mark Lavender. Mark is a trained architect who for 25 years worked for corporations specializing in institutional medical design. Mark switched gears 6 years ago and opened his two-person full-service residential design business, M. Lavender Interiors. Mark's experience, his years of experience at some of Chicago's most prestigious architectural firms, has served him well as he has established the processes and policies that have helped him build his business and grow his reputation. Mark's here to share the nitty-gritty details on his processes, his estimates, and his markup. You'll want to hear how he got over his fear of asking for payment and what he sees as a potential red flag to look for as you evaluate new client relationships. You're going to love Mark's down-to-earth personality and his practical tips to help you stand your ground when running your own interior design business. Hi, Mark. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hey, LuAnn, how are you?
I am great, and I am looking forward to this conversation, Mark, because I have learned, I thought what we were going to talk about, and we will, but was your residential firm that you've had for 6 years. But what I've learned is how much your previous 25 years in corporate design informs the success of your residential firm. So tell us a little bit about that background in corporate and what that was like, just the big picture of what kind of company you work for so that we get, the table set here.
Yeah, thanks, LuAnn. I was trained as an architect, went to architecture school, and worked for two large firms here in Chicago where I'm located and downtown, and was traveling the country doing large academic medical centers on university healthcare campuses, and our projects were 7 to 8 years. They were over 1 million square feet, responsible for up to $1 billion in construction and project costs. So working for these large firms, we had to they had a very strict corporate process that we had to employ on every project. And so I've really learned from that process and have tried to apply that to our, to my small two-person residential interior design firm.
And how smart, right? Because when we apply a process, now maybe doing a 7 to 8 year, multi-million-dollar project requires 40 steps. Even taking 20 of those steps to your residential, just really, I have to believe, just contributed to your projects from the beginning being much better managed than maybe colleagues that you've met through the years. Do you agree?
I like to think so. Our clients, keep hiring us back, over and over and referring us to new clients. So, and the consistent thing is, how easy we were to work with and how great we were to work with. And so we really try to employ this process from the first meeting, our intake call, to the agreement, to how a very set specific agenda for each meeting, all the way through installation. We have a process that we've tested over the years, and I found anytime we deviate from that process, we run into rough water, and it always comes back to the process. It's like, duh, Mark, why did you deviate? Why did you allow them to let you deviate from this? And I don't want it to sound like, we're this strict army sergeant, that kind of thing. But I feel like most of our clients seem to respect that process once we kind of lay it out and once they're finished.
Right. Well, I agree. I mean, I feel like anytime we have a misstep as a business owner, you know me, I always say go back to where you could have changed one thing personally to create a different outcome. And so often it is in the process. You're just like, oh, we always do this, and this time we didn't do it. And then, there goes the domino down the lane. And maybe the
Uh-huh.
thing that you deviated on was months ago, but the problem rears its head however many weeks or months or whatever down the road, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And I also love that you mentioned that, it's not like you have to be a drill sergeant about it because, I firmly believe, and it's, my belief as because I'm a consumer, I'm not an interior designer. I firmly believe, and I've said it repeatedly, I want you to lead me. I'm hiring you. Don't look at me and let me go cowboy on you and change the rules. I might suggest a rule change, but I probably am suggesting it not even realizing it's a rule change. I'm just saying, so could we do this? And if you're hesitating and saying, well, I guess they really want to, if you just looked at me and say that's not how it's done, I'm probably going to go, okay.
Yeah, and we found, because we live in a very affluent area here north of the city along Lake Michigan, and people are very sophisticated here, and by the time they've hired us, we're not usually their first designer.
Mm,
They've done projects in the past, so most of them seem to know what they're getting and what they're expecting. But anytime anybody wants to deviate from what we do, I'll politely say, that's a great idea, but here's why we do it the way we do it.
right.
And usually if you explain why you're doing something, I found most of the time clients will go, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I understand.
Right. I agree with that. When you can give the supporting information, then I can, as a consumer, say, oh, so this isn't just this random thing. They know exactly why they do what they do and how they do it, and just get out of the way and let them do what you paid them to do, right?
That's you are our ideal client. Yes.
Right. And I have to say, when you said so many of your clients return to you because they say you're so easy to work with and they like the process, I'm a firm believer in that. One of the main reasons for me starting the podcast was my close relationships with dozens of interior designers over the years through WindowWorks before I launched the podcast. And I really promise you, I truly saw that the designers that were always busy were not necessarily the designers that were producing the most beautiful work. It was at first shocking to me. I was like, wait a second, that's sort of average. You know what I mean? That's
Right,
sort of
right.
ordinary work. But meanwhile, this designer is on the horn every other week saying, got another project, could you measure it? And then some of the most truly talented, we'd be on a project and it might be now the one designer that was of average talent might only be doing 20, 30, 40, $50,000 projects, where the upper tier designers in my area who were truly actually more talented were often doing multiple hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million projects. But they had so many, and I know they don't need as many to be busy, but they would have long dry spells in their pipeline. And I firmly believed, and I watched it, it was because they were rarely hired back by the same clients who had another home in the Hamptons or another home in the mountains, because it was hard, the process was just difficult getting through.
Right, right.
Right.
And we like to say we can do both, that we give you a fantastic design, but it's also, and one of the things we put in our agreement, we want this to be fun for you. We
Mm.
we try to make it fun, and something you enjoy. It's not, oh God, I got to meet with the interior decorator on Saturday morning, kind of thing. We want you to look forward to meeting with us, and
Mm-hmm.
look forward to seeing what we've done, and getting your input, but we want it to be an enjoyable process. So
Mm.
we've worked really hard to try to make it make it enjoyable for the clients.
Yes. I mean, and that is the truth. When you have the combination, when you really do have an exceptional talent and an exceptional process, that's when your firm really does attract the types of projects and clients at whatever your niche is. But that's when you're in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're almost to the point where we can start to turn down work, in terms of clients that might not be the best fit, but we're not quite there yet. But we're hoping to get there here, in the next year or so. But
Well, at
but
6
yeah,
years
I
in,
mean,
it's a
it's
trajectory, right? It doesn't happen in a
right.
minute, right?
Right, right. And we do try to focus on full homes. We feel we are. I think it goes back to my large project experience. I don't necessarily want to do just your bathroom, or we will. But if we think it's going to lead to something else, or if we really like the client, we'll do it. But we prefer a full house kind of thing.
So that's a great little tidbit there. So instead of just point blank, brushing it with one stroke and say, we won't do just a bathroom, it's like you have other factors that you take into mind, that you think about, well, great client, okay, just a bathroom, or, this potentially one bathroom could lead to the rest of the master suite or whatever it is. So you have a little bit of a conversation with yourself about that.
We do every time we're approached by that, and 9 times out of 10, it does lead to more work.
Yeah.
So, but if you can see, well, it may just be the bathroom right now, but that bedroom, could use a little work, kind of thing. We'll, and as we start in, it's like, we'll gently suggest, well, this color would look great, carried on into the bedroom, that kind of thing. I
Yeah,
shouldn't be
this would
saying
be a
that on
great
air,
bathroom, but
but
it's going to look really crazy next to that bedroom of yours.
exactly. So I shouldn't be copying to this on national broadcast, but
But you know what? Your client knows it too, right? I
oh,
mean,
they
they
do,
know
they
it
do.
too.
They're like, we're so glad you talked us into this kind of thing. We were going to do this right now, but hey, it makes sense. And I'm like, well, we're already making a mess. We might as well do it once.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm thinking of a particular project that we did here at Window Works a couple of years back, and the client called and she just wanted to do new window treatments in the family room, and the family room was just updated, and it had new furniture, new carpet, new paint, all accessories, and the living room next to it was from the Tuscan 90s era,
Right,
right?
right.
And I'm like sitting there going, this is crazy pants. Like, it was an open room, it was literally like a huge open archway, and she's wanting me to figure out now, all of a sudden, after she's gone completely mid-century, how are the window treatments going to combine the spaces? And I'm like, what? Like, no, like, we're going to ruin this
They're
room
not.
because that room looks like that. And so I ultimately, she was difficult enough in the sense that she really fully believed there was a way. And I finally said to her, you know what? I'm going to recommend you to this one interior designer. Because I was like, I was done. I'm like, you're not listening to me. I know the answers. But you know what? I'm not getting paid by the hour. So,
Right.
and I said, call this woman. She's amazing. She'll give you some ideas. And then when it's time to do the window treatment, she'll come back. And I was like, because I was saying, are you going to do the living room and dining room? I am, but it's 2 to 3 years later. I came to the house. They called me. Okay, we're ready for the window treatments. 2 months later, the whole thing was demoed. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking sense into her,
But at
right?
least they're willing to do it. We've had a couple with that look that still love it. So it's like, how do we make this nice?
Exactly. Exactly. So, other lessons that you brought. Okay, so finite process. Number one, I just want to recap finite, strict process. And really, we understand that the ideal is not to deviate for the process. We understand lessons learned in hindsight. When we do, that's usually when we're going to face some sort of challenge or problem that we're not happy about, but we can always regroup again. And that we just gently, when somebody wants to push out of process, if we explain to them the logical reasons for the process, for that particular part of the process, generally you find that they will go over. And I will say, I have noticed that newer designers will do a little bit of because I told you so, as opposed to really, here are the reasons why. And that's why it's hard to get cooperation, right?
Yeah, and in our market, like I said, I mean, we're on the North Shore of Lake Michigan, north of the city.
You ain't told them anything. You're not telling them so anything, right?
Right. So I mean, if you just say, "Oh, it's because this is the way we do it," eh, that's not going to fly.
Mm,
You have to have a reason. You have to sell it. And, I appreciate that. Don't take me at face value. Make me earn my fee,
right.
kind of thing. I think it's critical.
I
And I
agree.
think it's great.
I agree. And then the other thing that you mentioned to me off air was that you learned from your corporate experience how to two things: no work without a contract and how to collect money. Talk to us a little bit about these lessons in hindsight, remember going through them, and how you take it to your own firm, Mark.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all about the contract. Everything goes back to the contract, and I hear I'm in Facebook groups, and I hear designers is, well, they were a friend and we just started working with them, and now they're not paying us. And I learned early on in my career, we were working for a hospital system, and I'd never collected money before. And we were we had a client and they were a month late, and the office principal came and said, "Mark, you need to call their accounting department and find out why we haven't been paid." I'm like, isn't that the accounting department's kind of job? And I can't do that. And so I stewed and fretted on it for about 2 days, and he came back, "Have we got the money? Are they sending the check?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have to do this." So I called, and the lady was very nice. She goes, "Oh, it's being processed. We got behind this month, and it's going out on Friday, and by Tuesday we had the check." And I'm like,
Mm.
"Well, that wasn't so bad." And then I developed a relationship with the lady, and at the system, and when something would be late, it was they would generally pay. But we did have an experience with a client. We were doing a project with another firm in another city. It was a larger project, and they had terminated our agreement. They decided to go in a different direction, and the firm in the other city billed through my firm. And by the time the bill got to us, the CEO had left. They had a new one. He goes, "I didn't authorize this work."
Oh,
So it took me probably 5 months of calling. By then, it taught me to be a pro at collecting money, because
yes.
by then it was like, "Look, we did the work. You owe us the money." And unfortunately, my firm had gotten paid because I got my invoice in on time. The other firm, just their process, they never got the money. But that
Mm.
always stuck with me, because it was over $100,000 worth
Whoa.
of fee. So they weren't upset with me. They realized it was on their end, but I just felt so bad that they
Mm.
had done the work and they didn't get paid for it. So it always taught me everything goes back to the contract. And like I was saying earlier, not to totally switch gears here, but we have probably a 7-page contract, and
Mm.
it explains all the meetings, the retainer, how we're going to bill, what we're going to buy, how we're going to pay for it, the markup. All of that stuff is outlined in the proposal and the agreement. And I feel like the more information people have, they can't come back and say, "Well, we didn't know this was going to go that way." So I feel like we try to be as transparent as possible. We mark everything up 30% of our net cost, and we go on the honor system. I don't share my invoices, my payments to providers. If someone asks, though, we're happy to do it, because we don't deviate from that 30%. So I feel like once you do it once, then you've lost that reputation.
Okay. So I do have a couple of questions in that 30%, but I want to go back to the contract for a moment. So
Okay.
you have a 7-page contract. What is your practice? Is your practice to review it in person, or do you send it by email and say, "Hey, let me know if you have any questions"? How do you do that?
We try to do it in person, and then we'll go through sort of a dummy contract, explain everything, and then we'll send the actual agreement email, ask if there's any questions. But most of the time, people will sign it because we've already, sort of explained the high points of it to begin with.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're reviewing it and you're pulling out and highlighting the areas where you know from experience that clients don't pay attention to, or they don't necessarily cognitively really understand what you're saying there. Do you do that sort of thing, Mark?
Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it.
Right. Like I've had conversations with designers and they've said to me, this is always in my contract and this is the thing that the client will always ignore or, not ends up doing or whatever. And I say then every time you present your contract now, you have to now have a specific conversation about that point, right? And for me,
Right.
I always say they haven't signed it yet. So there's no investment emotionally yet. And what I like, the language that I love is I would say to somebody, oh, and see this point five here, I want to take a special minute to explain five because in the past, this is the one point that I've had, situations with clients where after the fact, they don't recall this part of the contract or they didn't understand it. They didn't question me on it, but it's really super important. And we're not leaving here until you say to me, I get it. Right? Like, because what do I care
Yeah.
then? I'm looking at you like all your other clients were stupid. I'm going to get it. Right?
Right.
But
Right.
then as I
Exactly.
listen, I'd be like, oh, maybe I don't agree with that either. And that
Yeah.
is my
Maybe I
time
need
to
to
push
read
you
it.
back.
Then we maybe need to read it. And I think this may sound bad, but I've also found if, because we do deal with a lot of attorneys and a lot of that kind of stuff in our area, but I found, if the contract comes back with 35 things struck and 48 questions, they may not be the client for us because
See you,
it's sort of
bye.
indicative of how they are going to act during the process, during
Exactly.
the project.
I know. It's hard. It really is. I mean, attorneys get a bad rap, but it's the truth. It's like half the time it's just because they can, right?
Right, right. It's like, this is my contract. Either you want to work with us or you don't.
Right.
So,
And could you imagine if he or she ever gave you their contract to, let them take you, you hire them to take you to trial and you redlined it to death? They, like, what are you doing? Right?
oh yeah, absolutely. No,
Mm.
but and I don't know what it is about this business that people think one, they're entitled to a discount, and two, it's your contract doesn't matter
I
kind of
know.
thing.
I
So,
know. And I have to say that is also another thing that I literally have lots of one-on-one conversations with designers about. You are a business person. You are not to be marginalized. If somebody doesn't get it, then you don't have to engage with them. If they don't agree, you don't have to do it. Just see you bye, right?
right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do, but at the end of the day, we've had a couple, and I didn't have a good feeling, and they marked the heck out of the contract,
Mhm.
and we just said, I don't think we're going to be the right fit.
Mhm. And it's interesting because as window works over the last several years has grown so dramatically, and with COVID and the hospitality, the restaurant industry needing to seat so many people outside, our exterior work has exploded by over $1 million in 1 year. And the
Wow.
number of six-figure projects that we have with quote unquote corporations now. So, like a hotel in New York City or a big restaurant in wherever it may be. And now we're starting to, on a regular basis, have these kinds of situations. And I'm literally in our Monday morning sales meeting saying to my two sales reps that are responsible for selling these big projects, I'm like, if they don't sign, you can't do it. And they're like, oh, but it's a $180,000 project. We
Right.
really want to get it. I'm like, right. But they need to sign that they're going to rent the $12,000 boom to get our 500-pound awning to the 24th floor of that rooftop restaurant.
Right.
Like,
Right.
we can't
Right.
leave this to a handshake. You know what I
It
mean?
may be $180,000 fee, but it's going to cost us 250 to do the job, kind of
Exactly.
thing.
And the salesman
So,
in the moment is like, I got a big one. I want to sell it. And I'm like,
right.
yes,
Right.
but we want to complete it. Like, and get our money.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And
So,
I mean, it's so important to have this rigor. It really is. And another thing I think it's important once, because people do sign the agreement and we try to point out sort of, we go through it. But the other important thing that we do, we have probably after we do the furniture meeting, we typically will do an estimate at that point. And here, here's our estimate. And again, we reiterate at that point, we really expect three payments. We do a 75% up front and then another 15% when everything is purchased for the project, and then the final 10%, 2 weeks before everything is to be delivered. So we go over that again with them, when we present the estimate, just so that there's no question, because we want to be paid 100%, before anything is delivered.
Love it.
Just,
I love
you know,
it. I
and
love
we'll
it.
work with you if something's damaged, or something comes that we have to obviously we will work to get that resolved, but we want to be paid 100% before anything crosses your door.
Now that's a good point that you brought that up because I could see, look, you've mentioned a couple of times you're working with sophisticated clientele. They are not the first rodeo that they've been to. Many of them are professional. They are probably mostly professionals, let alone lawyers. So when you say and I will be paid in full before a stick of furniture crosses your threshold. Do you get pushback, and how do you overcome that, Mark?
You know, Ironically, we have not really had any pushback.
Because do you think it's because you just present it with confidence, or what do you think the reason is?
I think that has a lot to do with it. And I'll tell them, hey, your sofa's in, hey, these four chairs are in, this is in, and honestly, I think too, we do a lot of, gut renovations. There's a contractor, there's an architect. I think also, this sounds bad, but I think they've got so much going on too. It's like, oh, another payment, and honestly, and I explained to them, you pay for the tile 100% from the contractor before he brings it. What's the difference in that and your sofa kind of thing? I mean, it's the same thing. And I don't know any contractor that would deliver anything before being paid in full. And so, we're in the same boat.
Right. Well, and obviously this is all the way at the other spectrum of the marketplace, but I think with the last several years of online ordering being such a normal thing, I mean, you don't even pay, you pay your DoorDash in full before you get it, right? Like
Right.
you could have
Wayfair's not
ordered a
taking the
pizza with, mushrooms, and the pizza with pepperoni comes and it's you paid for it. It's like whatever,
Right,
right?
right. And you call them and they may send you another one, but you've paid for it. It's no different. Wayfair's not letting you make a deposit and then pay
Right.
for it in full when it comes.
Right.
You pay for it, they ship it,
Right.
kind of thing.
And I
So,
think I think for more seasoned and sophisticated designers where you're accustomed to that rigorous training that you had in corporate, it's much easier for you to understand. Look, for 25 years, we got paid in full on multi-million dollar jobs. I'm not going to worry about it on this $80,000 job. You're going to pay me in full. But when you're new and coming up through the ranks and you don't have the benefit of that experience, even that crossover to me, I think is logical. It's like you said, you're not even getting the stupid $50 chair from Wayfair, without paying it in full.
right,
So just
exactly.
make logic, right?
You just have to stand your ground. And
Mm.
yeah, it's hard as hell the first time you do it, but once you do it, I'm as sympathetic as anybody about stuff. But once you do it a couple of times, it's like, whatever,
Right.
pay me,
Exactly.
kind of thing.
Exactly. It
It's not
becomes
that
course of
flippant, but
business.
right, it's not that flippant, but I need to be paid. I've got to eat. I'm
Right.
not doing this for free.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, talk to us a little bit about this markup. You do 30% on product and I know from off air on product and delivery. So, first of all, you sound like the kind of guy to me that has his numbers locked down. And do you find that 30% is enough of a margin to make your living on, Mark? Obviously, right? You do you know your numbers? I mean, let's start there.
Well, it's funny. My partner in life is an accountant, so he does all my
Oh,
books, and
good.
he worked for several large accounting firms. He does financial accounting now, and he knows to the penny. Would I like to charge more markup? Absolutely, but 30% seems to be the going rate in our area.
Okay.
Um, we also charge for our design time. We charge an hourly fee for that. So, I mean, honestly, that's as much of where we make our money as the product. Some projects, if we're selling all high end stuff, obviously we're doing pretty well. Other projects, we do smaller, we have a smaller margin. So they sort of balance out, but we charge 30% on everything. Even stuff, if we buy something at Pottery Barn or Crate and Barrel, I mean, we get a trade discount there, but I sell it as that's covering my time to physically place the order, track the shipping, have the receiver accept the order, and that covers our, excuse me, that covers our install.
Okay, so what
So
you're saying,
once you explain to
yeah.
people, sorry to cut you off
No,
there.
that's okay.
Once we explain to our clients, this is covering my time for this, most people go, yeah, that's fair, or, oh, that seems like the going rate, talking with my friends or what have you. And we explain, anything we're buying through a trade, at our merchandise mart here in Chicago, most of the time the discount is a little deeper than 30%. So you're typically paying unless we're buying something from a national retailer, you're paying less than retail.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But that's not a condition of the work that you do. It's not like I'm making your life so that you're paying less than retail. It's like, sometimes you're paying less than retail, sometimes you're paying more than retail. This is how this dog and pony show runs here.
Right. You got this covering my time.
Yes. And so and it was interesting. So if you buy something at Pottery Barn, it's $1,000, you're going to buy it for 900, but you're still going to tack on 30%. So they're going to pay more than what they would have if they ordered it themselves and received it themselves and, tracked the deficiencies because of course it's going to come damaged or scratched or something. Let's just take that to the bank.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. And that also just comes from, would you say, just a confidence in this is how I do this? I mean, let me back up. Is it because of the many 25 years experience that you have, not just in corporate design, but 25 years dealing with people, clients, projects, all the different animals and, shapes and sizes that we come in? Is it that experience, Mark, that enables you to just say, this is it, 30% on everything? Or is there something else that you would share and say that was like the kind of thing that flipped the switch in your head on how you own that so that you don't get tremendous pushback?
I think it's a little bit of both. I started first couple of projects I did, working with another designer on a project, and they were only charging 20%.
Mm.
And the first project I did, I'm like, I'm losing my shirt.
Right.
And I know it's only 10%, but oddly enough, I was meeting with a new client, and I hadn't really thought about it. And she said, now you charge 30%, right? That's sort of what I've been used to paying. And I went, absolutely.
Thank you,
So
Mrs. Client.
that's how we raised our markup by 10%. And then I went to the next one and she said, what's your markup? And I said, 30%. She goes, that seems reasonable. So it was sort of, I'm not that I'm, again, back to the drill sergeant, but the way we increased our markup really was a client saying, I'm not paying you more than 30%. I'm like, works for me.
Right. Okay. Okay. And it's funny because I feel like I mostly hear it's 35%, but then you're saying your area where you do business, the majority of your other colleagues are doing 30. And so that just
seems
makes
that
it
way
easier.
here in the Midwest. So maybe we can get to 35. That's great information.
Right.
But yeah, right now, most of the other designers I speak with are 30%.
Okay. Well, and it does work that way when you recognize and find out when you talk with colleagues from not only your area but all over what they are marking up, and it's sort of, oh, it can be done. So just like that woman said to you, 30, you're like, oh, okay, it can be done. Sometimes it's just that, you could just even do 32%, Mark.
Yeah,
you're
there you
worth
go.
2% more.
I appreciate the confidence.
I mean, my thing is I never sell from the standpoint that I got to be the same as everybody else because I'm going to give you more. I'm going to be better. So I can be more. Maybe if I were to pull, 25 designers that were my direct competitors, quote unquote, or colleagues in the area, and the 90% of them were 30, I'd probably go 32.
That's great advice. I'm glad I signed up for this podcast.
Because in my mind, I can express what you'll get from me, no matter what we're talking about, to a level of 2 to 4 to 5%. Right?
I think that's fair. And I mean, the same with your hourly rate. I talked to designers like, oh, we don't charge for design time. I'm like, why? You're doing the work.
That's crazy.
It's amazing to me. Or like I charge $50 and I feel bad doing that. I'm like, it's your time. It's your, this
Yeah.
is your living.
Yeah. That just stumps me. This is where I start to get like really aggravated and crazy because what is to feel bad about? You're either in business or you're doing it for fun, in which case just do it for fun and do it for free. Like, you
Right.
know,
Exactly.
like you know, nobody pays you to go to yoga. That's a hobby. You do that for free. And in fact, you pay to do it. And so if you're going to do design for a hobby, it's actually going to cost you money because you're going to drive to people's houses and you're going to go to, drive to different locations to source product and
Right.
blah, blah, blah. So it's like going to
Yeah,
yoga. It costs you money to do it.
it is. Yeah, you're losing money on the operation here.
Exactly. And so your the way your firm makes money is that it is a combination of hourly fee for design hours and then the 30% markup. And let's just, before we talk about your hourly, you shared with me off air that you are also marking 30% on the delivery, on the freight, and all of that. So some people are, here's the different models to my understanding. You correct me if you know differently. Some people wait and bill freight after the fact to the exact penny of what the freight and the delivery and the shipping all was. Some people just do, say, 18% across the board. And sometimes it comes out that it costs 15% on a particular item. Some items it costs 20%, but 18% seems to cover, 90% of it and makes the money. And you are 30% on that line item.
I am 30% of the actual cost. So if we know, we will do, if I know the shipping, like for fabric or certain items, a vendor will give you the shipping, I will mark that up 30%. Sort of our final 10% payment really covers the final shipping. Our local receiver delivering, all the furniture to the home. Sort of that last leg is really what that final 10% of our fee covers. Of the estimate. But we typically we do not do a average cost. I'll estimate, that it's about 15% of our costs, but we bill the actual cost. I've looked at doing, sort of an 18% across the board, and it goes back to my accountant who's very nervous about,
Mm.
us taking a hit on, in anything. So we found it just works better. If the shipping was $1,000, we mark it up 30%.
Okay. So the thing is, I've never ever learned of anybody that does this. And so what I love is it's possible because you're doing it. And if somebody else likes this model, there's a proven person out there doing it. So if the shipping cost on a dining room table, $485.62, you're putting 30% on that.
I am, yes.
Okay. And then do you do the reveal install, Mark, in which case you are gathering everything at a receiver and then it goes out for delivery? So are you charging them the shipping to the receiver and then you're charging 30% also on the receiver's invoice to you?
That's correct. Yes.
Nice. I love it.
It's just what we do, and nobody's pushed back. So, it's,
Well, and you're describing that it is a combination invoice in one is what I'm going to use my own words, but as a consumer what I'm hearing is not only am I paying for the actual shipping, but the difference, that 30%, is for Mark and his team to call up and make sure it gets shipped, and then when it gets shipped to make sure it's been received and to make sure that, if it came in blue and it's supposed to be in red, they take care of going it back. Like, you're not just saying I'm charging you 30%, so I can get
right,
rich. It's like,
right. And
right?
I'm at the beach,
Yes.
kind of
Because
thing.
the alternate is that you could say to a client, if I were to push you back and say, that's ridiculous. If shipping is $485, I think you should charge me $485. Then you could say, great. Then if I were to do that, and I'm not going to because it's not my business model, but if I were, now I'm going to charge you my hourly rate to make sure it's coming in, to get it delivered, to check on it, to see if my receiver have it. You're going to add the hourly in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there comes that what you described, the explanation for the fees, the explanation for the rule, the explanation for the process.
Right. And honestly, you're probably coming out a little better just paying the markup than you would be, to
On the
pay our
hourly.
hourly fee to do that. So, and again, nobody's ever pushed back on it. So,
Well,
you
that's a
know,
great point, Mark, because my brain doesn't think in math. We all know that, right? But if an item you know,
Whose does, other than my accountant?
right? But like if an item was a $200, whatever, I don't know, a lamp or a tchotchke, and the shipping on that is $15, 30% of $15, if your hourly is $250, the 30% of $15 is a bargain.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
But we try to make that up when we do carpet. That's
Mm-hmm.
$25,000 worth of carpet, and the delivery and the installation is thousands of dollars. Then
Yep.
that's where that allows us to make it up. It's
Mm-hmm.
sort of the same thing of the 18%. I think it's just I'm doing it more real numbers. The $1,000 I'm going to make on your antique Persian rug to have it shipped versus
The
your
25 cents on the
your
lamp.
your 25 cents on the lamp. But it's my time on the Persian rug is covering the
Yes.
lamp.
Yeah.
So it all kind of balances out.
Well,
And we do, sorry, when we do the estimate, we will do a line by line of each room. The lamp is $600, the chair is X, and then at the bottom we do an estimate of, 15% for freight and delivery. And, here's your total cost. Your house is going to be $350,000.
mm,
And, we need 75% up front. And then so it's sort of all, they'll see the line items, but then our invoice is, 350,000, 75%, that kind of thing.
right.
So, I mean, it's sort of all in the soup, if you will.
I love it. I love it. I think that it makes complete sense. And what you're saying is when you're presenting the estimate up front to get your 75%, you're just going to use that 15% as the guesstimate for freight across. But then when it comes down to the end of the tail of the project, you're going back in and calculating the exact amount for the freight and the delivery and rejiggering that number when you go and you get your final 10%. Is that correct?
Exactly. And if in the estimate the final 10% was say 30,000 and the shipping came in at 24, then we'll bill 24.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's you know,
Yep.
it's
I love
that's
it.
how we do it.
I love it. That's great. That's terrific. And also, it's very important, particularly when you're doing projects of this level, that you are providing some sort of this could cost $350,000, right? Like people can't just sign on the dotted line with, well, it's going to be my hourly and I'm not sure how many hours I'm going to work. So do you give them an estimate based on experience when I do a project of this many square feet or this many rooms on what you project the hourly fees to be, Mark?
We don't.
Oh.
We
You're
don't.
a good salesman. I'm just going to say.
We don't do that. And we say, we're going to be as expedient as we can. I'm not going to sit here, and bill you 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for the next year and a half. And I think we do charge a retainer, and that sort of defrays some of the costs at the end. But no, we don't put an estimate on the hours. I find you don't know what you're getting into. And that was a lesson I learned with flat fee. Here's my, $25,000 flat fee, and I've spent 50, because you've changed your mind 6 times. So and I don't want to say you're going to change your mind 6 times when we start a project, but no, we do not give a range of fee because
So
that's the
then
number anyone always sticks with.
well, right. You anchor that number and then it's there in their head. But how do I then, as a consumer, know that I can engage with you? So you might say that when you said your $350,000, I took that to include the design fee. So what you're saying is that is just product and freight and your percentage.
That's just that. Yes.
Okay.
Design fees are over here. And if you ask me, I'd say, I'm guessing it's going to be about 40 hours, but, my assistant charges less. So we try to blend the hours and, all that kind of stuff. But I will give you a verbal range, but I don't like to commit to anything on the agreement because,
Yes.
it's the number people stick with.
Remember.
And you
Well,
never know.
you don't
And
ever know.
the other thing we've found, a lot of our homes are guts, and I don't want to throw my construction friends under the bus, but we think a project when they start, inevitably it's going to be 3 months, and it always inevitably turns into 9 to 12 months. And so, there's all these this extra time and job site visits and what have you that, you know, I would lose my shirt if I committed to, a 3-month project and it takes 12.
Yes. I do get that. I get that from the standpoint of you in your profession, your colleagues in the profession, but I have to say, at least you're saying that you're ballparking it in some way. And I would be okay with it not being contractual. But if I'm sitting there with my husband and we're like, okay, we're looking at about 350 in furniture, I I would have no idea. Like you could tell me your hourly rate. I don't know if it's 200 or if it's 400, but I have I have no idea. Will you spend 20 hours on it or 300 hours on it? And those could be very different numbers. And how do I go and budget for this project if you're not ballparking that for me? So you're saying that you do ballpark it, but you ballpark it verbally, or you only ballpark it if I'm the person who pushes you back?
Probably. That sounds terrible.
Well, what happens if I don't think to ask you about it, and I didn't know that there was going to be another $50,000 in design fees? I'm like, whoa, we had 350 budgeted for this project.
Because you've already been paying my design fee before we get to the $350,000
Oh,
estimate.
oh, oh, oh,
So,
oh, oh, oh.
so
Okay.
that the estimate comes generally at meeting 2 or 3. I mean, we'll start with the first meeting. Do you have a budget in mind? And 9 times out of 10, people will say, we have no idea.
Right.
And it's funny how when we get, so I'm like, okay, let's try to put a range to it. And so generally at the second meeting, we'll sort of start ballparking, numbers. It's talking, with the furniture that we're talking about here, it's probably 250, depending on the level, or to 400, whatever. And it's ironic then, generally we will have that discussion, and they always seem to have a number once you give them that initial number.
Right.
And then we'll sort of scale down. I like to tell this story. I had one great client. We went through the furniture plan, and I had my little. I do have sort of a standard, sofas X, high, low, medium, high kind of thing, and we were going through sort of the I can't think of the word, but sort of a hy God, I can't,
Hypothetical.
a hypothetical, and we came up with a number, and I didn't share that with them. I said, do you guys have an idea? And he said, well, I think, and we're doing probably 7 rooms in their house.
Whoa.
And he said, I'm thinking 25,000. And I said, I learned this from on a business podcast, but I said, well, okay, you all just bought the sofa in the family room 2 years ago. How much did you pay for that?
Right.
And his wife goes, it was about 15. And I said, okay, so we've got, we're buying a new sofa for the living room. We've got 10,000 to spend on the rest of the house. What do we want to buy? And he looked at me, he goes, oh, kind of thing. And he said, can we have your spreadsheet? And I'm like, absolutely. And they came back the next week. They said, give us some time. They came back the next week, and, they had a realistic number, and that's what we went with. And we pride ourselves. We're always at or below our estimate, unless some significant scope changes. But if there's something we find or they find that's expensive that we had, say we'd estimated, 5,000 for a sofa, and they find a $12,000 sofa, or we see something that's perfect, then we'll go back and, talk about it, and we'll look, well, maybe we can cut, the dining table doesn't need to be this. Maybe we can look at this, kind of thing. But we really do pride ourselves on, hitting that number.
Yeah. Well,
So
and it's so
that's
true. You know what? I usually remember the guest name, but I don't in this situation, unfortunately. But I remember, somebody pointing out that unless you have, as a consumer, done and designed and furnished with a designer an entire, even whether it's one room even or a whole floor or whatever it may be, all at one time, that as consumers you really do forget. Even if you're just regular people like me that don't have $20,000 sofas, right? You really forget,
right.
like, oh, that sectional was that. Oh, that desk was that, because you buy it all along the way, and
Right.
it's like you forget that if you literally look at your room, you're like, I'm a regular person and this is a $40,000 room. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And over time, we have we have a little database, and so when we finish a project, we put the numbers in, and so we can average now. A sofa is going to be X amount of dollars. The dining table is going to be X amount of dollars, but it does add up. I mean, it's amazing how it adds up.
Right.
And even when I first started, I'm like, "Are you kidding?" you know and we're not extravagant by any. We try to give our clients a great value. We're not going to the most expensive showroom in the merchandise mart here. We do pride ourselves on providing a great look at a reasonable price.
I love the idea of the database, and we've had other designers talk about that they have their spreadsheets of, what the projects cost and that they review them because in the moment when I am the consumer and I am completely just naively not understanding that my regular house that I did on my own over a 5 or a 10-year period through retail places, I probably spent $100,000 and it didn't even look right, right? That
Right.
if you can confidently say, based on experience, dining room tables cost this, sofas cost this, lamps cost this, and here's 10 projects where the average sofa price was XYZ. I think it just makes you as a consumer makes you feel like you're in knowledgeable hands. It's like you're doing something based on
Right.
experience, and that's always helpful. And then of course, as you said, to flip it back to them, the last sofa you purchased, what did it cost, right?
Right. And I thought I learned that ironically on a podcast, and it really resonated with me. And then I used it, and I'm like, this was great. But most of our clients, they're going into completely newly renovated homes. So we have window treatments, we have rugs, we have soup to nuts. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
and people bring stuff or have stuff, and we certainly will work with that. And we work around that, or we'll have something recovered. We don't want to just everything's got to be, you've got to start from scratch kind of thing, because
Mm.
I just don't believe in throwing out good stuff if it if we can use it or if it works.
Right. Well, that's where your talent comes in, where you give it new life or, reinterpret it or just use it amongst other things and it makes it feel fresh and new again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
We don't, and I think it adds character to the house. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's part of your story,
Yes,
and so it's important.
because that's what so much of that is. It is part of the story. It's part. It's so funny because I have this little table in my foyer, and it was not real wood. It's veneer, and so it's in lousy condition, and it's crappy and scratched and it's all the things because you can't fix it because it's not, but
Right.
it was my great grandmother's, and it doesn't match anything in the house. And even my own mother was like, "What do you want that for?" I'm like, "Well, it was great
Right.
grandma's."
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm
Exactly.
not overly sentimental, but I'm just like, it's one thing from a gabillion years ago. I want it, and I don't care.
There's these pieces, and we feel strongly this is your home, this is your story, and it's not my story. I'm going on to the next project. So
Right.
I feel like some of these interiors you see are so devoid of personality, and I know that's a little off the business topic, but I feel strongly if you have pieces, we want to use them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, as a final, take some advice from me and my 30 plus years of interior design work, Mark. What would it be? Would it be centering around making sure that you connect the story for your client? Would it be around a business tip that you would share? And I'm okay if you want to share it to a rising designer, a seasoned designer, a colleague, at your level, anything that you comes to mind that you're just like, what? This is one thing you should know.
Don't be afraid to collect the money you're due.
Good for you.
You knew I was going to say that, right?
Well, you know what? It all starts and ends there, right? What are we doing it for if we can't do that, right?
And just to sort of add to that, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I was so terrified the first time I had to do it.
Well, and I
And the
love that
same
your
thing up
boss.
the next day,
Yeah.
So
Your boss sounds like my husband. He's the same way. He will look at a sales rep and he'll be like, "Did you call?" And then the next day he'll be like, "What did they say?" And I know because the sales rep will say to me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, "You got to do it." And then I'm like back channeling, texting my sales reps going, "Don't come in today without that money. Just don't,"
right,
because he's out for
right,
bear.
right, exactly. Exactly. So if I could give any advice, it's don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And most of the time with my sales rep, it's not that they're afraid. They're just like, I was too busy. I'm like, no, we're never too busy to collect the money, people.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, so funny. Well, Mark, it was so awesome talking to you. I really appreciate your sharing the advice and the lessons that you learned and how you transferred your corporate experience into your own residential firm. So, thank you. Thank you so much for coming up on the show today with me.
Oh, this was great. I really enjoyed talking about it. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. You know me, when someone says processes, my ears perk up, right? Mark just gets it. Processes are vital when you're running a business. Processes can save you from getting yourself into uncomfortable situations with your clients, with your vendors, and more critically, from losing money and losing your business, okay? Now, we don't all have the benefit of a big corporation's legal department drilling the importance of process into us, but you have me and you have Mark. And we're not lawyers, but we know that we all need processes, okay? The big successful firms, whether they be Chicago, New York, LA, wherever they are, they all run on process, and so should we. Okay. And even if we, you, me, whoever doesn't aspire to be big, we do want to be successful, right? And establishing those concrete processes is the foundation for a successful, profitable business. Okay. And having a strict process doesn't mean that your business will be no fun to work with. On the contrary, Mark was very clear that he aims to provide his clients with a fun and pleasurable design experience. So to Mark and to me, process and great client experience go hand in hand. We all know that clients love and appreciate when you've got your stuff together, that you have your processes locked down, and that they can rely on you to handle all the things, right? And deliver the final product as they hoped and expected. And you heard Mark. His clients aren't complaining about his strict adherence to process and policy. They actually love how easy he is to work with, okay? The other thing is, I especially love Mark's policy of no work without a contract. All right. Drill that into your head. Now, you might be thinking, LuAnn, that's crazy. My bestie, Sally Smith, right? She doesn't need a contract with me. I'm just helping her freshen up her dining room. No, sweetie, see, Sally Smith needs a contract. You need a contract. Is she paying you? Is she not paying you? Paying you for your time for picking out stuff at Home Goods? Not paying you for your time? It doesn't matter what the deal is. You just need to be clear from the get-go what the expectations are. And in that a very casual situation, I'm not suggesting that you do your 14-page contract all the time with your closest friends. But me, I would sit down and talk about what your friend expects, what I expect, what we think this is going to look like, and I would write it down, right? Because the thing is, the surefire way to ruin a friendship or a client relationship is not to create and to review and sign an agreement. Okay? The written word is our friend. Write down the expectations. Have the other party agree to them, right? Sally might be thinking you're going to spend 6 hours helping her just because you love to do it and you want to get out of the house, which may be true. But you might also be assuming that Sally's going to be watching your kids while you shop for her stuff, okay? Maybe that's news to her. Okay, so you see what I'm getting at. Nobody is trying to take advantage here, but this seemingly simple arrangement could go south really quick. Now, I'm talking about when you really are really good friends, right? I mean, and this could be just that like 6 hours, all right? But when we're in with anybody beyond the level of best friend, not only do you need an agreement, you need a solid contract, just like Mark says. No contract, no work. Okay. And I just can't say enough. Contract process, stick to it, right? You'll love yourself when you do because everything will get easier. All right. Now, the other thing that Mark does that I love is he keeps a database of the products he uses in his designs so that he has real numbers to refer to when he creates estimates. So smart. Okay. We've had other successful designers share the same tip with us. Okay. You know what I think. If one person says it, two people say it, three people say it, there's something happening here. All right. Now, My Doma Studio is a great tool to help you do that, to keep your database. My Doma Studio is the workflow software that organizes your design projects from beginning to end, saving you time, money, and keeping everything in one place. And just for listeners of a well-designed business, you can get 20% off My Doma Studio for 3 months. Just visit mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business, which will also be in the show notes for the episode, okay? mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business. I want to say thank you, Mark, for being so open about your business. And I hope this helps you listening, okay, and helps you with your business. I also want to give a shout out to my friend, designer Jane Morgan. How are you, lady? I cannot wait. I am going to be in Chicago in the fall. I think September, October. I might be there 2 times. So doing a monogram event. All right. So this is fall 2021, already on the books. All right. So Jane, let's make sure that we see each other. All right. Now, if you don't have the benefit of 25 years at a corporate design firm, or you could just use some sharpening of your skills, the summer session of LuAnn University is kicking off the first week of July. Okay. Registration is opening on June 11th. That's this coming Friday if you're listening in real time. So if you need help in establishing your process, my girl Sarah Brennan is back. Her class, How to Build Systems into Your Services, begins July 7th. Now, this is the same class that we previously called Process Leads to Profits. Just so you know, that is now the department, okay, for systems. It's called Process Leads to Profits. And her particular class that hundreds of designers have gone through already and rave about is now just has a new name, How to Build Systems into Your Services, all right? And if you're pretty good on systems, you don't need a lot of help there, but you might want some help with some video and how to attract your ideal client by creating good video, then I highly suggest that you check out Ariane Belazar's class, okay? Video for Creatives. This class is going to start July 6th, all right? There's so many more classes. I think there's 8 or 9 classes in the summer semester. So go to LuAnnUniversity.com to learn more and take advantage of early bird registration that opens Friday, June 11th. All right? Take a class, take some time for yourself. Do what you need to do to get your business in shape and ready for the fall. And, let's finish the year out good, right? Let's kick it into high gear and make sure you have a great 2021. Thanks so much for joining me today and for listening. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.